I want to ask you if you're familiar with Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution.
I don't memorize everything, so read.
That's fine. I'm not asking you if you believe in independence right now or should we leave. What I'm asking you is whose decision is it? Is it we the people or is it the legislature?
You've asked me a question I've not been asked. You've asked me a question I've not researched, and so I will follow back. And
you have to research it?
Yeah,
I just read the Texas Constitution.
Ma'am, I understand, but there will be a legal opinion on that, and I don't know what that legal opinion is, and I would want to go to the Attorney General and find out what that really says and really means and what the intent is. Reading me something for the first time that I have not looked at, and you're asking me a question, and I'm happy to give you an answer and follow up and give you the answer.
Many of us are waking up to the fact that the values of those in Washington, D.C. are not our values.
It is under siege by a Democrat president who refuses to do his constitutional duty to secure the border of the United States.
Then I think we take NASA, we take the military, we take the oil.
Here in Texas, we esteem those principles of Thomas Jefferson, that all political power is inherent in the people. Texans are sick and tired of being governed by 180,000 pages of federal laws, rules, and regulations.
And I've dedicated the last 15 years of my life to make sure that we don't have to do this anymore.
It is for all of these reasons and more that tonight I am officially announcing that I will be running as a Republican candidate to become the next Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Texas.
Governor, what's the enforcement of this going to look like in terms of 25%, 50%? Who's going to do it, and are there any penalties attached?
I missed the last part of the question.
Are there any penalties attached to this? I mean, just mostly who's going to be doing the enforcing here?
Right. Well, so for all of these executive orders, before now and now, there's several levels of enforcement. For one, there's the enforcement of up to a $1,000 fine and 180 days in jail. But the more primary enforcement would be either the local level or the regulatory level. And so for a lot of these businesses, they have an authorization to conduct business in the state of Texas. And if they violate the law, which this is now the law, they're subject to losing their license to have an open business.
In power, whether red or blue, they could not care less about Texas, me and you. They created this give me country that don't value hard work. For a Texan to survive, all we need are some seeds and dirt. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. Texan arise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country, for it's long gone. We believe in family and we value our community. Gladly lend a helping hand to a neighbor in need. And we don't believe that government should provide for all of society's needs. No, it's the pride of a Texan to give to others voluntarily. Texan, rise, don't you hear your call? You gotta save your country, for it's long gone. Texan, rise, don't you hear your call? You gotta save your country, for it's long gone. Our tax dollars and they love our natural resources. They don't want to see us driving trucks, they'd rather see us riding horses. And now they want to ban our guns, you know, especially the ones that look scary. But may I remind you of the Gonzales Cannon and the Alamo heroes we buried. Texan, rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country, for it's long gone. Texan, rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country, for it's long gone. This last verse is straight from the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 and 2. Look it up. Texas is an independent state, yet presently we suffer. We no longer possess the right to locally self-govern. And now it's time as a people in which all political power is inherent. And in such manner we find expedient, we reform or abolish our government. I said, Texan, rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country, for it's long gone. Texan, rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country, for it's long gone.
Hey, all right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Daniel Miller, and this is my late night coffee talk, right? This is where once a week I get on a camera and broadcast out to various social media and streaming platforms and drink coffee and decompress a bit, right? Just kind of let you know what's been happening and what's going on and where we're headed and all of those wonderful things. And it's funny. I got asked again. So for those of you who have never seen this, the genesis of this was really me uh, needing to kind of decompress. Right? If you haven't figured it out yet, if you don't know what I do, I work a lot, and so as part of all that working, I drink coffee a lot. And so this time of the evening, about the middle of the week, I would take a break and just kind of discuss and not just get on here and monologue, but take banter back and forth from social media. And of course, this started with in the TNM members Facebook group. We have a Facebook group for members only. And then it spilled over as more and more people wanted to participate. So if you haven't, again, figured it out yet, you are a pivotal part of this weekly decompress for me. And that leads me into the first bit of business that we need to take care of, which is number one. If you are watching on YouTube, whether it's the TNM YouTube or my YouTube channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And that notification bell just tells you, it's going to ping you every time we go live or every time we fire up a video. And grab the link and go share it on other social media as well. And by the way, thank you very much to everyone who answered the call and is subscribing to my fairly new YouTube channel, right? I had it many, many years ago and never really did anything with it, just poured everything into the TNM YouTube channel. And I was told that I needed to do that. So thank you all for going over there and subscribing to that. As a matter of fact, let me just do this while we're at it. There's the address to my YouTube channel. You can go over there and do your thing, like and subscribe, the usual. But also, if you're participating on the TNM's, YouTube channel, Super Chat is active. Both chats aggregate into a little window over here on this side of the screen. And so we'll be, you guys, like I said, are an integral part of this. So if you have questions or comments, be sure to dump them in the chat tonight. This is live. This isn't like pre-recorded and then we do it as a live. It is 100% live. So we'll be getting those. And of course, Kara is with me tonight. She is that way. And she is watching the chat. She's feeding me your questions and comments because frankly, it's really tiny in front of me and it scrolls like a slot machine because you guys are very chatty. So she's making sure I don't miss anything important. But YouTube chat for TNM Super Chat is live. Contributions that come in via Super Chat on the TNM channel, 100% minus, of course, the haircut that YouTube gives us goes right to the work of the TNM. So be sure you get over there, you Super Chatters. And if you'd like to donate directly to my campaign, you can do that. Yes, I am running for lieutenant governor. You can do that right here at dmcdonate.com. That's dmcdonate.com. If you're watching on Facebook, you know what to do. You need to like it and comment and share. Like, comment, share. Help us defeat the algorithm. And of course, for those of you on Twitter, retweet. Get her done. And share it wherever. We're on Twitch and whatever platform you are watching this on, be sure to spread the word. Help us reach more people because mainstream media is not going to do the job for us. That is evident. It's just the way it works. Okay, so look, we've had one heck of a week, right? Since the last time we visited. We were wow. I mean, we did let's think about this. So Friday and Saturday, we had a lot going on, but Saturday and Sunday in particular those were both campaign travel days. So we started out Saturday by heading over to Huntsville to pick up campaign signs because we had run out and our guy that handles the printing is in Huntsville, had one of our supporters. It was Mitch, I believe. Mitch picked those signs up for us, and we happened to meet him in the parking lot of a McDonald's in Huntsville and decided to pop in and get something to drink. And lo and behold, ran into candidate for Texas Land Commissioner, Dr. John Spires. He just literally happened to be in there. So we bumped into him, got to visit with him. Burned out of Huntsville and drove all the way up to a town outside of Decatur called Boyd, where we were guests of the Patriot Society of Boyd, and we met some phenomenal people up there. Amy and Monica and Carrie through a candidate forum. So we got an opportunity to set up a table, got to visit with a room full of people. If you've seen the pictures flying around social media, the room was jam-packed. and got to visit with some phenomenal people. Got Andy Hopper, who's running for Texas House, Chad L. Miller, and he will tell you the L stands for Liberty, who's running for office there in Wise County. I mean, just so many people that were there. So it was great to reconnect with the Drurys while we were there, and of course see Amanda Hopper and Sam Hopper and just everyone that was there. Met phenomenal people that are on fire for Texas and ready to take Texas back, including one gentleman who got up and gave an incredible testimony, who moved from California, has lived here for many, many years, and he was sounding the alarm. I mean, he was definitely letting everyone there know how critical this particular election is. And talking about what he left. And there was another gentleman who essentially did the same thing. So really, really incredible folks that were there. So we did that event, and then spent the night in Decatur, and then had to fastball down to Llano for a candidate forum down there. John Bolgiano was one of the organizers, and we were there with got to see Weston Martinez, who's also running for land commissioner. We've known Weston for many, many years. And of course, our good friend, State Representative James White, who's running for agriculture commissioner. Met a ton of local candidates there, including one who's running for Texas Senate. And when he started off his resume, he's like, well, he says, I really hadn't intended to do this. I had been, I was a retired football coach for 33 years. I thought, man, finally somebody I could talk football analogies with and not have to apologize before I do them. Right. So I had a great time with him. And again, a great turnout there in Llano. All the tables were full. Got to communicate with a lot of brand new voters, folks who had not been familiar with the campaign. A lot of folks that were familiar with our work through the TNM and working for Texas Independence and the Alamo and all the things that we've done. So got to meet with all those folks. So then immediately we had to leave Llano and drive all the way back to Nederland because we had a funeral to be at Monday morning. And that was the funeral of the gentleman that I talked about last week, perhaps even the week before, one of our dear, dear friends for many years, and probably one of the staunchest TNM members that you would ever meet, Roger Evans. He passed away. And I got to tell you, it was, I don't, as I talked about last week, I don't like to lose people. I don't. And I hated to, I just don't like to lose people. I want everyone who is in the movement, who has worked so hard, I want them to be able to see the finished product of Texas independence. And Roger's funeral was fitting for his life in the TNM. As a matter of fact, when people got up to start speaking at the funeral, it was definitely one of the things that they mentioned about him was his love for the TNM and his activism in the TNM. It was a sad moment, but I will tell you, it was great to see the number of people that his passion turned on to what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I say this a lot, that sometimes the best message you can give about the TNM or Texas independence is yourself, right? If you're walking the walk, that's sometimes the best argument you can make for anyone. Yeah. So it was definitely a sad moment, but he's going to be missed. I can't say too much more about that, other than the fact that I hope that we can honor him with our actions and get this done and get it done quickly. That being said, it was, beyond that, it was standard campaign and work and independence and everything else. I mean, it's been pretty crazy. Whether it's some of the interesting attacks that have come from other people that are running for office, or whatever, who are pretending to run for office, or the news that broke that Rick Perry has entered the Texas governor's race, but probably not the Rick Perry that you're thinking about. Apparently, someone with the name Rick Perry filed on the last day of filing on the 13th, and the establishment are losing their minds over it because they know that it's going to draw votes away from Greg Abbott. So, chuckles all the way around. Interesting news broke today. The highest court in Texas, Texas actually has two high courts. We have a Supreme Court, we have a Court of Criminal Appeals, but the court handed the Attorney General Ken Paxton a loss over provisions related to the prosecution of election fraud, and essentially said that election fraud must be prosecuted by the district attorney. And so Paxton's response, he tweeted about it, is now he said that, now the determination as to whether or not election fraud gets prosecuted is going to be left up to a bunch of Soros-funded district attorneys. Well, that reminded me of something. The fact that in the campaign, in the T&M, as a legislative priority, and for many, many years, we have advocated for a prohibition against out-of-state campaign funds flowing into Texas-only races, right? For example, the one Paxton cited, there was a bunch of Soros-linked money that was being funneled into local races for district attorneys some years back. You go back and you see a group that Eric Holder, who was Attorney General under Barack Obama, was dumping $250,000 into Texas House races in the last cycle. You go on and on and on, and you see this big flow of money that's coming in from California, New York, and K Street lobbyists in Washington, D.C. into the campaign coffers, into races that make absolutely no sense, at least on the surface, and at least not then, right? Obviously, Holder's money to the Texas House, they're still trying to figure this blue wave thing out, and they figure throwing more money at the problem is going to do it. But the fact of the matter is when Soros was playing in local DA races, now you understand why. And now you understand why a prohibition against out-of-state campaign contributions is a must. It's not a ban on out-of-state campaign contributions is not really a campaign finance issue. It's a sovereignty issue, right? So think about it this way. We don't allow campaign contributions from China or Russia or Mexico or any other country around the world, right? They are forbidden. And so think about why that is. Why don't we allow campaign contributions from foreign entities? Well, because we don't want foreign influence in our elections. But if you think about it, if Texas is, as Article 1, Section 1 says, a free and independent state, we are a sovereign state, as all states of the United States were meant to be, then wouldn't campaign contributions that came from other states within the United States also be a violation of our sovereignty? So when you have candidates that come in, yes, Beto O'Rourke, I'm looking at you, and they are funded primarily by big money donors, right? PACs that are funded by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, or California Hollywood money, right? When they're funded that way, well, that's foreign money that is being used to influence a Texas election. And so, I have to tell you, I view money coming from Hollywood celebrities and K Street lobbyists the same way, for influencing elections, the same way that I view Russian bot farms tweeting on behalf of Hillary's campaign, right? I mean, that it's the same thing. So while we have been somewhat castigated for even making the suggestion because people look at it like a campaign finance issue, the fact of the matter is it is a sovereignty issue. And if you're going to be a Texas first candidate, right, if you're going to go out there and you're going to tout that you're Texas first, you got to at least have this conversation on the table about the impact of out of state campaign funds playing in our elections. And it's wrong. And there needs to be a prohibition on it. And today proves it. The tweet from the Attorney General complaining about Soros-funded district attorneys making the decision over whether or not election fraud, voter fraud, whatever you want to call it, gets prosecuted is proof that it's the conversation that we should have been having all along. It's a conversation, frankly, where we were far ahead of the curve. And now people are going to listen. Because they didn't listen before, it's a problem. But if they'd listened before, it would not be a problem right now. We wouldn't be having this conversation. But I'll tell you the other thing that it does too, right? When you look at candidates that we think of are as people who are not acting in the best interest of Texas, right? Guys like George P. Bush or Dan Patrick or Greg Abbott, look and see how much money flows into their campaign coffers from outside of Texas, right? You think about, just take an insurgent candidate, right? Let's just take one of these House races, okay? When these House races happen, which, you understand kind of what the spend is generally. I mean, I know back in 2012 when I ran for state rep, Alan Ritter spent $300,000 to beat me up against $10,000 that I raised. But if you look at that type of money that flows into those coffers, see how much of it is actually coming from out of state. How much is flowing in from PACs out of state? And so what you find out is that these incumbents, because they sell out, wind up with an unfair advantage because now they are a conduit for influences outside of Texas to come in and get done whatever it is that they want to get done. And that outside of Texas money is used to prop up the establishment. You take that out of the equation and the fight becomes far more fair, right? All of a sudden now it's a much fairer fight because we're all playing in the same pond, right? We're all having to raise money out of the same group of people, the people that just so happens we are representing. Because ultimately, when it comes to campaign finance, that's what it's really about. People are donating money to your campaign because they believe that you are the best person to represent them. So why is George Soros giving money to district attorneys, right? Why are Hollywood celebrities giving money to people like Beto O'Rourke? Why are K Street lobbyists and all these random PACs outside of Texas giving money to Dan Patrick or George P. Bush? Well, it's the same reason. They believe that those people are the best people to represent them. And now we got a problem because in most cases, representing the people of Texas and representing the interests of people on the federal system or outside of Texas are mutually exclusive things. And we've seen time and time again, the political establishment in Austin pays more attention to the people who put money in their campaign coffers than they do the people that they are supposed to serve. And it's one of the reasons that we're in the mess that we're in. It's one of the big reasons. So yeah, it was interesting when that news broke today. That here we are in this situation. The Attorney General effectively acknowledging what we have been trying to get done all along, and so now maybe there will be some traction on it. And I will tell you, regardless of how people, of some of the controversy surrounding it, as Lieutenant Governor, we'll have that conversation A ban on out-of-state campaign funding will absolutely be on the table, and it will be a high priority because it is if we do not, it continues to be the backdoor method to destroy the sovereignty of Texas. And you cannot be a Texas first candidate if you're not willing to have that discussion and take out-of-state campaign finance off the table. Point blank. Okay, so you know what? Let me start taking some questions. You guys are very questiony and chatty tonight. How about that? Okay. So let me take this question first. Lisa sends a question from YouTube. She says, "Who passes legislation about outside money being forbidden and election?" Okay, so it's that is legislation, right? That is all handled by statute. So it would be a bill that would make a change to the Texas election code, particularly the sections dealing with campaign finance, and specifically at a prohibition against campaign contributions from outside of Texas. Period. The TNM drafted the language for the bill, or at least part of the draft language, 4 sessions back. It's been a while. So we actually took it to the Texas legislature and tried to work the legislation. And you know what? Amazingly enough, none of them wanted to touch it. Can you think why that might be? Can you just imagine for a moment why they might not want to touch it? Okay, so let's take some more questions. Sound good? Okay. Hey, note of encouragement. Debbie from Facebook. Very scary times, Dan. So glad my 45-year-old in Washington State and grandkids realize this. Thanks for your continued drive, North Texas. Hey, thank you very much. We're just going to keep doing what we have always done. And Lord willing, when the primaries come around in March, we will have a whole new crop of legislators. And yours truly will be in the lieutenant governor's office, and we are going to get this stuff done. Eric says Eric on YouTube says he thinks the feds would not start a hot war, but would cut us off from trade, and so would other countries. Yeah, that's not the case. And obviously this is a TEXIT question, and about the repercussions. Basically, what the response would be from the U.S. and other countries. And I will tell you, and just like I told someone the other day who posited the very same thing, who suggested that they would kind of go that European Union route as they did with the UK, drag their heels on trade. But there's one very big difference, and that is this, is that Texas is an economic powerhouse. Countries around the world want to trade with the United States, and the United States wants to continue to trade with Texas. If they decide to be punitive because Texans, their only crime was voting the wrong way, then their economic movements, first off, there's no basis to sanction us, but if they wanted to get ridiculous with trade, it's going to harm them far more than us. I mean, we continue to be the number one state in the United States for manufactured exports. The economic bennies go on and on and on. So it would definitely hurt them more than it would hurt us. And look, it's pragmatic. I mean, that's where they've got to be, because that's, at the end of the day, that's how they make their decisions. They would throw themselves probably into a massive recession or depression. So they have got to trade with us. And in trading with us, the more punitive and lopsided their actions are, the worse it is for them. For us, we trade with the world anyway. Someone asked, when will the TNM accept Bitcoin? It is in process. It's happening now. I actually had messages back and forth with our executive director, Nate Smith, and the songmeister who wrote Texan Arise that plays before this program every time, about that. And so we are in the process of getting that set up. So we'll be accepting Bitcoin and other crypto very soon. Okay. My Lawn Guy. That's a great name. My Lawn Guy. Okay. You're not, just to be clear, so there is no one that is misled. He's not my lawn guy, but his name is My Lawn Guy on YouTube. He says, I've heard that if we do leave, there'd be a war against us and anyone else that leaves. What do you think the probability of that happening? 0. And I actually wrote about it in my book. It's actually on the website at texitnow.org. Oh, hang on. I probably should have done this. I wrote about it in my book, the one that I've got to, I have to sign all these, right? That's why they're here on my desk. But if you go to texitnow.org, that's actually one of the answered questions. And we walk through all the scenarios, why it's highly unlikely, why it's improbable for it to happen. I say the probability is 0. There's always a possibility, right? But I mean, it would take such a bizarre set of circumstances. But again, for us, what that means is that we have to do everything right, which means legislation for a vote, a free, fair vote, post open debate on the issue, and a fair election, right, where the votes are tallied and people participate and all those things. So, that we have to follow through a lawful process so that we're doing everything the right way. Hey, Viva, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay, interesting. All right, man, you guys have a lot of good questions. I'm just scanning to make sure that we're hitting these. All right, here's one. Mr. Miller, thoughts on giving more authority to our elected sheriffs and not these unelected, overpaid police chiefs? Look, I'm firmly behind our sheriffs and believe that they need more power. But I will tell you this other thing too is that in some of these larger urban areas, these police chiefs need to get a collar. I mean, I was never happier than when Art Acevedo, who went from Austin to Houston, decided to go to Florida. And I think I heard the other day that he got fired or resigned or whatever. And I hope beyond hope that guy does not make his way back to Texas. Right? Some of these large city police chiefs are problematic. But look, I'm not gonna denigrate police chiefs for these municipalities because there are some great ones out there, and county sheriffs have their area of expertise, their area that they work, and many of them do a phenomenal job. And of course, my hat's off to those border county sheriffs and a lot of those sheriffs that are in the counties, inside from the border, inland a bit, because they're doing their duty plus some. So, so the sheriffs are doing a phenomenal job, and there are a lot of phenomenal police chiefs out there. I come from my hometown, which is originally White Oak, Texas. We had a police chief who was there the whole time I was growing up, and the guy was phenomenal at his job. He was a great guy, and I actually, like a few years after I got out of high school and went to college, ran into him and had a phenomenal conversation with him. Just, he as a kid, you have one view of police chiefs, and then as an adult, you take on a whole new appreciation. But look, we need to empower our sheriffs. I'm not going to lie about that. I think a lot of the power of our sheriffs has been usurped, and it does need to be restored. Someone on YouTube said, will TNM form a political party? I'm going to run for office. The answer is no. And the reason that the TNM is not forming a political party has actually been talked about at length for many, many years. And I will tell you that the pressure for the TNM forming a political party typically came after, when UKIP came in third in the general election in the UK, when Brexit Party got a bunch of MEPs elected to the European Parliament. That sort of thing. And so people look wistfully at that system over there and they say, hey, shouldn't the TNM form a political party? And I have to tell you, while there is a lot of symmetry between Texas and kind of what UKIP was, and then the Brexit Party and things of that nature. While there is some similarities, some analogies you can draw, it's not a true one for one comparison, and especially when it comes down to the issue of political parties. And there's a whole lot of reason for that, right? The European Parliament is elected via proportional representation. We have a first past the post system here, and statutorily speaking, political parties are so ingrained in the Texas election code that it makes the formation of a third party virtually impossible, right? The success of any party outside of the two majors. So it's just not something that's in the cards for us. Let's see. So Matt on YouTube says, why can't we start our own currency and banking system? Okay, great question. We are sort of there. Okay, now I talk about it in the book where the state actually charters banks. There are actually, I think, 2 banks that are state banks that are chartered in the Texas Comptroller's office, right? So the Texas Comptroller has that. So we already have the foundation, and I can thank State Representative James White for finding that out. He and I had a conversation several sessions back about the formation of a state bank, and it's when we both found out that the state sort of already has not one but 2. We already have our own sovereign wealth fund, more than one, and then we are about this close to having our own precious metals backed currency. Okay, so little known provision in the Texas Gold Depository Act, right? Remember the headline? We all heard that Texas got its own Fort Knox. Well, there was a little known provision inside that bill that called for the creation of a system of electronic transactions denominated by deposits in the Precious Metals Depository. And so the Precious Metals Depository is built in Leander, and now we just need to get that system fast-tracked, and that's literally just a hair's breadth away from the establishment of our own currency. Now, ultimately, will Texas want just a precious metals-backed currency or a commodity-backed currency? That is a debate for another day. But the fact remains that we are literally this close to already having one. So, an important piece of information. AJR asks, why are we so far behind Florida since DeSantis takes crypto for state fees? Look, the crypto for state fees is not the only way that we're behind Florida on a lot of things, right? Whether it's the mask mandates or any of these things, but I think that the running joke inside political circles right now is, if you want to know what Greg Abbott's going to do, watch what DeSantis does and set a timer for 6 weeks, right? I mean, that's kind of where our governor has been relegated to, is mimicking the governor of Florida. I mean, how did we end up in this situation? And of course, at his right hand sits Silent Dan, who says nothing, just nods a lot, doesn't speak out. He goes out and carries the water for Greg Abbott because, frankly, they're both in trouble, right? They're both underwater. Dan Patrick's approval ratings are low. Greg Abbott's approvals are low. So they're both underwater. And the fact that Patrick is viewing me as his opposition, which, by the way, I've got a funny story for you guys, right? I forgot to tell y'all. I can't believe I did this. So you guys know the video that we released about Dan Patrick. It was about the border, and let me see if I've got it. I'll see if I can run it for you. I don't think I have it on here right now. Yeah, I don't have it in the deck. Man, if I'd have thought about that would have been great. But it's the video that we run about. We did it right around the time of what happened in Del Rio. Okay, so you guys remember the big migrant surge in Del Rio. All of these politicians decide to put on their shirts with their embroidered office on them in the seal, go down there for photo ops, and to deal with that surge, the federal government pulled personnel off of actual border checkpoints to go down there and handle that crisis. And so Abbott and Patrick got together and said, we're going to close these crossings, right? If they're not going to man them, we're just going to close them. And the federal government came back and said, no, you're not. And so Abbott and Patrick backed down. And it's the clip that we run of him on the Laura Ingraham show. And she plainly says, Texas, she explains the situation, says Texas backed down. And then Dan Patrick comes up and goes, Texas didn't back down. And it's like, no, Texas totally backed down. Actually, it was you guys who backed down. Well, that interview had been featured prominently on Dan Patrick's Facebook page. And as of yesterday, it's gone. So apparently that video is making a difference, right? That video pointing out what he did and how they backed down. And look, I've said it time and time again, and I'm not ashamed to do it. We've got leadership in Austin that look at come and take it not as a statement of defiance, but as terms of surrender. And we know the power to secure the border is in the hands of Texas. Texas can take unilateral action to get it done. And I've highlighted it. If you go to my website, danielomiller.com, go to the issues page, I talk specifically about how we do it, right? In excruciating detail. I talk about how we do it. And it's not as difficult as they make it sound, right? When Huffine says, I'll do in 3 days what these guys haven't been able to do in 30 years, it's possible. Right? It's absolutely 100% possible. Now, I would prefer it not be done exclusively through executive order. There needs to be legislative support, which is why we're advocating for the legislation that we're advocating for, full militarization of the state guard because they cannot be federalized, open-ended recruitment where there is a focus on previous military experience, specifically combat veterans, with public announcement that the first major mission of a militarized state guard will be to defend the border, and then boom, deploy, go down there and do it. That is $2 billion better spent than giving it to having to pay for the DPS to come run traffic patrols 30 miles inland. And let me tell you, the DPS down there working, but by the time those people get 30 miles in, they're already here, right? And my viewpoint is we don't cede not 1 square inch of Texas, not 30 miles, not 30 inches. We protect all of Texas, period. Okay, let's go through here and let's find some more questions. Sound good? Man, it's been more talk than coffee tonight. I need more coffee. Patrick wants to know about removing the word nationalist from the name Texas Nationalist Movement. Look, we've covered that ad nauseum. I actually wrote about it in my first book, Line in the Sand. That's not going to change. Matter of fact, we have a specific video on our YouTube channel, right? So if you're watching on the TNM's YouTube channel that deals specifically with that name and how we won't be explaining it away, why it is a perfect description for who we are and what we're about. And frankly, I don't understand. I don't believe that the taboo on that word exists, especially now when people have over the last many, many years come to understand that nationalism is not a bad thing. It's a love for one's nation and an expression of independence for that nation. And it presupposes that Texas is a nation. So, so we'll get that done. So go check out that video. And if you have further questions or more discussion, feel free to send a message into the organization. Okay. Let's find a good one here. Man, you guys, yeah. Texas Wishes wants me to comment on parents being treated like terrorists when speaking at school board meetings. Look, you want to talk about something that I find utterly infuriating. It is this thing, right? But it goes back to, and for those of you who don't know, kind of what's going on. Parents are super engaged right now in how their children are being educated. I blame a lot of that on these virtual schooling, right? Because for the first time, parents got a firsthand view of what their children were being taught and the manner in which they were being taught. And so rightfully, they had questions. So whether it's curriculum, things like the teaching of critical race theory, right? Or pornography in the schools, right? These pornographic materials that are made available in the libraries, or these ridiculous mask mandates, right? Parents are rightfully concerned about how their children are being educated. And guess what? It's our right to be so, right? If we send our kids to school, any school, right? I don't care if it's a public school or private school or a Christian school or, whatever kind of school, parents have every right to question anything and everything that they want, period. Okay? Because parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's education. Now, what's happened is that these neo-Marxists and progressives, now that they have been exposed to the light of day and what they're doing, and parents are riled up about it, they went and they complained to the federal government. Oh no, these parents are coming to these school board meetings and they're being super vocal about this. And what happened? The Biden administration, Merrick Garland, and the Department of Justice decided to spin up, at the request of the National Association of School Boards, to essentially, they spin up an investigation that essentially treated these parents who were outraged, who went to speak at school board meetings, to treat them like domestic terrorists. And it happened right here in Texas. We have literally had parents dragged out of school board meetings for simply asking questions during a citizen question time and stating speaking their opinion on certain things. There was a situation where parents did that at a school board meeting and then were arrested from their homes later because of a charge from the school district, right? So who do these people serve? Well, I'll tell you the root of this. It is an ideology that was echoed by the current Secretary of Education on the federal side, who clearly said that parents are not the primary stakeholders in their children's education. What that means is they believe that your children belong to them, right? Because if you've had a neo-Marxist takeover of the federal government and the federal government can claim that your children belong to them, once they control the next generation, they control the future. And so they've turned these schools into indoctrination facilities, and parents who are rightfully speaking up, who are concerned about how their children are being taught and what they're being taught, those parents are being treated like criminals. And it's wrong, right? It's 100% wrong. And the fact of the matter is that if we had any backbone in the leadership in Austin, in the legislature, they would criminalize the activity of some of these educators and administrators and school board members in their attempts to disenfranchise parents from the education of their children. They would criminalize it. There is no room in Texas for government officials who believe that our children belong to them. Period. There's no room. So we press on, because I'm going to tell you, the governor and the legislature have lost control of Texas. The neo-Marxists are running rampant. When there are bills that have passed that allegedly ban critical race theory in schools, and the schools continue to teach it in defiance of the order. It's just like the same thing with these mask mandates and these vaccination mandates. Governor Abbott says, "Oh, but I have put out an executive order banning this sort of thing." These businesses don't care. Kroger's getting ready to penalize people, right? They're going to penalize their employees who don't take the COVID vax, right? So, I mean, from the standpoint of government power and government authority, Abbott and Patrick and the rest of those guys have lost all authority. Nobody's listening to them because they're a pack of hypocrites. When Dan Patrick gets out and complains and says that, oh, I'm totally against these vaccination mandates and these mask mandates, but is the guy who Sid Miller, the current agriculture commissioner, had to sue. He sued him during the session because Dan Patrick Senate was requiring you to get COVID tested and wear masks and do all that stuff on the Senate side to participate in hearings, to visit the Senate gallery. You had to do it. And I literally, okay, just to prove my point, let me go to my email. So I got in an email exchange, and I'm not going to say who it is, but I got in an email exchange about tonight from someone who could not make it, who works for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Right? They're a jailer, and here's what it said. The pay is horrible, and they are still required to wear masks. Says we were supposed to be getting a check for hazard pay, a one-time check, and our assistant warden told us we wouldn't see any of that money. None of it, because it was going to pay for other things. And so I responded back and was kind of shocked that they were still under the mask mandates. And this person said, yep, it's ridiculous. They're even forcing inmates to get vaccinated. Said, yes, they're inmates, but it's not right. We shouldn't even have to be wearing them after almost 2 years. They can fire me. I refuse. So we're seeing this across the board. So Texas Department of Criminal Justice is a state agency. Apparently the governor has said no mask mandates, no vax mandates. But here is someone who works for Texas Department of Criminal Justice saying they're forcing us to wear masks. They're forcing the inmates to get the vax, and we're next. And we're next. That's not from me. I'm not. Here it is. It's an email, literally from someone who is experiencing it firsthand. So when I say that the powers that be have lost all authority and control because of their hypocrisy, it's things like this that tell us that. There are people still losing their jobs over the mandates. Okay. Moving right along. Now I went from the school board meetings to that. So hopefully you get the gist of how I feel about these school board meetings. I think that the behavior of the school boards and the school districts when they attempt to disenfranchise parents is criminal and should be criminalized. Okay, Maryland wanted to know, what can you do about illegals invading Texas? I talked about border security just a minute ago, so I hope that got your question. Let's see. Alexa on YouTube says, if we TEXIT and we immediately suspend or fire all current politicians in all positions, must run again and open it for new candidates in a new system. Look, things go on as they have gone on. So, and again, it's one of the things I talk about in the book, right, in the TEXIT book, that explain that process. TEXIT is not an act; it's a process, and there are elections. Our elections will continue to happen as mandated by the Constitution, and that's how it works out. And so that's your opportunity. But as I have said time and time again, the time to clean house from the state house to the schoolhouse is not after a successful Texit vote, it's ahead of it. And again, your poster child for that is what happened in Brexit. Period. That's the way it works. Hey, Stephen Mull, thank you for your super chat, sir. I do appreciate that. Man, I hope I'm not missing anything. I know I'm running short on time, so I'm cherry picking. I hope you guys don't mind. Okay, so someone said, do you believe that the people of a state can secede for whatever reason they see fit, or do they need to demonstrate that their constitutional rights have been violated? If the latter option, which violated rights would you point to? It's interesting. I actually had a fairly civil interview with a reporter, with James Berrigan at the Texas Tribune last week. And like the first 20 minutes of the interview was taken up by a discussion sort of about that thing, except for it was the use of the word secession. He's like, what, you don't like the word? It's like, I don't think it's accurate. One of the things I talk about in the TEXIT book is how over the last several decades, there's been a really clear refinement of, this idea of nation states reasserting their status, right, or becoming independent nations. And in the book, I talk about, if you believe that the United States, from its foundation, is a single monolithic nation state, right, that it's really just one big self-governing nation, and that states are merely administrative subdivisions and don't have any sovereignty of their own, then secession is the appropriate word. But in our case, right, where we are a state that is fully sovereign in its own right, that is bound together through this political economic union with a touch of mutual defense compact and free trade and all these things, right? And the state is still a sovereign entity, then technically it's not secession. Technically, what it is withdrawing membership from that body, right? So we're withdrawing membership, but that's a mouthful, right? So one of the reasons we talk about TEXIT, because that's essentially what it is. So in those terms, right, if we understand the union to be this collection of sovereign, self-governing entities that have delegated certain sovereignty to a federal system that has a very limited scope, aka what's in the Constitution, then if you take that as the definition, then what you wind up with, you come to the conclusion that because withdrawing from the Union is not forbidden in Article 1, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution, it is then reserved to the states and the people under the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So you have to go look at the state constitution or state law to determine whether or not they have codified that right in some way. Now, we're lucky here in Texas. Article 1, Section 2 reserves the right to alter, reform, or abolish our government to the people as an inalienable right. Nevada, not so lucky, because the Constitution of the state of Nevada has an explicit prohibition against withdrawing from the Union. So if Nevada wanted to do what we are doing, then they would actually have to go amend their state constitution to even begin that process, right? So that is really it. So there is some difference between those two terms and what those terms mean, and so therefore, I think the question becomes not one of whether or not certain rights have to be violated to withdraw. I don't think that that's really part of the process, but it is part of the consideration. And I think it's part of the consideration that every state should have, right? As every state has this conversation, the question they should be asking themselves is simple. If my state were currently a self-governing independent nation state in every respect of the word, would we vote to join the Union? And if you wouldn't vote to join, then why would you ever vote to stay? And I think that factors into it. Some states are going to have a little more grievance than others. Texas, our grievances are pretty doggone high. Now, we're being governed by a Washington, D.C., a federal monstrosity that has a completely different worldview, right? They are making a fast track toward the Sovietization of North America, and Texans just want to be free, right? We just want to live free. We want to be independent. We want to be self-governing. We don't want to have our futures dictated by 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats or having a bunch of people in Congress that we didn't elect forcing policies on us that we don't want. We don't want to continue to overpay $103 to $160 billion annually into the federal system. We don't want it, right? Those are things that we don't want. Our border is porous. It's got more holes than a Democrat jobs plan, right? It's a national security issue, a public health issue, a public safety issue. It's a sovereignty issue. And because all of this wealth is being robbed, whether it's through, federal regulatory accumulation that compresses 2% of GDP annually, compounding, or that overpayment that we make, right? Whether it's that, it places an undue burden on Texans to have to come up with more money out of our pockets. And the fact of the matter is, I've talked about this in the lieutenant governor's race about the abolition of property taxes, right? How it is absolutely possible for us to expand the range of the sales tax, not increase it, but expand it, right? Change how we handle M&O, and then, of course, cut government spending. But the elephant in the room that no one else who talks about abolishing property taxes will talk about is this, is that if we were no longer a part of that federal system and being robbed of all those things, then we wouldn't have to cough up additional money out of our pockets in the form of property taxes, because that wealth would stay here and we would be a lot better off. It's the way it works. It's just math, folks. It's just math. Okay. Wow. Yeah, man, you guys are just really pounding the questions tonight. Well, look, we're getting real close to wrap up. I got about 4 minutes to go. Man, there's some great ones, and I think we'll save some of these for next week. But I got to wrap this thing up, man. Honestly, I could spend a lot of time on here with you guys, but we do start kind of late, and I still have work to do. It's been a bit of a day. I'm not going to lie, but a phenomenal day. Look, our campaign is rocking and rolling, and don't let anyone else out there fool you. Right now, there is one person in the lieutenant governor's race that could beat Dan Patrick, and his name is Daniel Miller. Hey, that's me. That's my name, right? We can beat him because it's not me. It's not me running against Dan Patrick. It's all of us, because we're sick and tired of not being represented in Austin, Texas. And we're sick and tired of Austin, Texas becoming that swamp that Washington, D.C. is. And we're going to go out and we're going to do the things necessary to get the votes to go out there and win. And absolutely, to do that, I'm going to need your help. First and foremost, if you have not visited my website at danielomiller.com and pledged your vote, pledged your support, I need you to do that as soon as this is over with. Head over to danielomiller.com, sign up, pledge your vote. And what that does is that allows us to communicate with you, but then we can give you certain things that certain information that you can use to help us reach other people, right? Because that's going to be the key. The key to victory is being able to reach voters. And that starts with you, right? Let us know that we've reached you. Let us know that you want to be a part of our movement to take Texas back. And in addition, while you're there, you can hit the donate button or head over to dmcdonate.com. The incumbent, our opponent, has got a war chest in excess of $20 million. And we don't intend to raise $20 million. But what we intend to do is raise enough to reach as many voters in Texas as possible. And that's going to take a lot. That's phone calls, that's mailers, that's billboards, that's radio, TV. It's all of the things that you can imagine. But we have to do this because the number one enemy right now that will prevent us from winning is silence. If we do not reach the voters of Texas, then what will happen is they will go with what they know. And that, unfortunately for us, is a lieutenant governor who sat silently by while our churches, our schools, our businesses were shut down. One that sits silently by and does nothing within his power to prevent these mandates or to secure the border, or who tells us that the border is secure when we know it's not, or tells us that we're going to get property tax relief, and instead we all got property tax hikes. So the fact of the matter is we need you, because without you, we're not going to be able to get this done. But here's what I do know. I do know that with enough of you working and speaking and donating and doing everything you can, we can win this race. And so I would appreciate your pledge of support. I would appreciate your vote. I would appreciate your contribution. I would appreciate your volunteerism, and I would appreciate you speaking your piece and letting other people in Texas know that they have a choice. They finally have someone that will be their voice, their hands, and their champion in Austin, Texas. All they have to do is cast their vote come the spring. Okay. And of course, if you are posting on any social media, be sure to post with the hashtag DMC2022. That's DMC2022. And of course, somebody said, what does the C stand for? It stands for campaign, DMC2022. And then, of course, the associations start happening, like Run DMC, right? That's kind of cool. Don't think it's going to be the campaign theme, but it's still cool nonetheless, right? Hashtag DMC2022. Also, be sure to, while you're over at the website, head over and look at the events page. We got probably about 8 or 9 more invitations in today. So starting in the next several weeks, of course, we're in a dead run to early voting, right? I mean, it's just literally weeks away. We're going to be crisscrossing the state, so be sure that you are on our email list and come out and show your support anytime we're in the area. I will always be there. There will always be a TNM liaison there. And in addition, in any of these areas where we have some of our Take Texas Back candidates or our Texas First candidates, we will partner up. So, you're going to get to see a lot of us together speaking and firing it up and giving you a glimpse as to who your representatives could be if you help us get across the finish line. All right. Well, folks, that is my time tonight. I want to thank you for being here with me on my weekly decompress. And I have not forgotten the request last week. We still have got tons of videos to upload on our YouTube channel, some of the speeches from on the road. So we're going to get that done. It's just, many hands make light work, and we just need more hands. So, but we'll get it done, right? We'll get it done at some point. I will sleep when the coffee runs out. All right. That being said, folks, I'm going to leave you as I leave you every single solitary week with the thing that the political minds tell me that I should never do, and that is quote Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. My friends, I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.
Many of us are waking up to the fact that the values of those in Washington, D.C. are not our values.
It is under siege by a Democrat president who refuses to do his constitutional duty to secure the border of the United States.
Then I think we take NASA, we take the military, we take the oil.
Here in Texas, we esteem those principles of Thomas Jefferson, that all political power is inherent in the people. Texans are sick and tired of being governed by 180,000 pages of federal laws, rules, and regulations.
And I've dedicated the last 15 years of my life to make sure that we don't have to do this anymore.
It is for all of these reasons and more that tonight I am officially announcing that I will be running as a Republican candidate to become the next lieutenant governor of the great state of Texas.